Knowing someone, you never really know anybody until you enter into the familiar place with them. And when you get into a knowing place, that is a place that you actually have either been hooked, brought into, and it gets a little bit harder, more complicated to get to know that, to get to leave a person, I should say, once you discover that this is not a person I want to continue to know. The lackadaisical attitude and the kind of not being hyper vigilant is not something that's taught to us as human beings, because we're given a lot of saying to take things as they come. It is what it is, or we're given the society bill sells us that there's more good to be accepting and to be acceptable, right? So people can snow us very easy. People can snow. I'm not talking for everyone. People learn their lessons. Some people are trained from young to recognize deception, recognize people who are gonna basically buy and sell them. You know, bring them in and kind of use them to their advantage. Your life in general consists of a whole lot of twists and turns and movements in your life, right? The very word "know" was a term, and it also means knowing someone is a friendship. But the very word "know" in the Bible is a very more word that meant to have intercourse with somebody. That person, this man knew the woman, right? And it works. It works. I'm not talking about on a sexual level now. I'm just talking on a human level, on a social level. When you get to know somebody, you enter into an intercourse with them, right? And between the two of you, one is going to be the like the male, and the other one's going to be like the female, right? And one basically takes in, all right, and the other and gives the pleasure, and the other one basically comes and does their thing and sends brings forth, like as a man would give a sperm in any kind of deep relationship. You have somebody, one person can be given, another person can be doing the taking. It is a rarity, and it's also a very good thing. Depends how you've been brought up. But from what I'm gathering, from what I've heard in my travels, anyway, people seem to have a hard time building good, solid relationships with other people based upon the fact they discover after the fact that that person I got to know is not the person I thought I knew, right? And at that time, it's really hard to undo, to reverse, because you have a certain amount of investment that got put into that situation, that friendship, that business relationship, whatever the case is. But the knowing was always a factor, right? Knowing, what did you know? And your knower, people call it, or your discernment, or your sense, or people call it intuition, is never really honed correctly. If you're a person that has been either hypnotized by people who are not very good at being good, and you let go of the knower, because sometimes all you really knew is basically how to hobnob, to sit in the same room, in the same environment with people who are not good. So you become accustomed to them. They're the people who are your knower. Your knower for the good only changes when you now start to come to a point in your life that you don't want to know these kinds of people anymore. Now, what happens to you on the inside? It starts to happen, whether you like it, whether you know it's happening. Your brain begins to kick in and changes its way of forming whole new pathways, different types of information, and it starts to reach out, and you start to feel it, and you start to physically take an action to reach out in ways to not have these kinds of people whom you know in your life anymore. So then they become, later in your life, as you grow from knowing them, they become strange, the strangers, not the ones that you want to know. because nobody who really knows someone deeply can ever say they're strangers, right? You know that person. To what level you know them, whether you relate to them on the deceptive level, you're both playing a role. You're both playing a role in the whole exchange. To take a responsibility for what happens in your life and the people that you know, and it's a huge step in the right direction, but it's a step that's necessary. And those people that you know that it don't mean you well in your life, they will begin to change right before your very eyes, because they will sense that you are not want to know them anymore. That not as much as you're in that you're right there in their face saying that to them. They will feel it in your environment. They'll feel it in their environment with you and them. You're becoming a different person now. You become the person that you how can I put it, that you want to be an improvement. You want to improve. So many people in life don't really well, I shouldn't say so many. It would seem that misery loves company, and it would seem also that birds of a feather flock together. It really does. And people go through their life, and because they like the dynamics, yeah, whether they talk and laugh and they do blah blah blah, whatever, they like the dynamics. I mean, I don't know if you watched an old show from the 80s called Cheers, right? That was one of the most famous shows, and it was nothing really special about it. They all went somewhere. They sat on a chair. There's a place along there, the top here where it would slide the beer down, and they all basically drank this thing called beer, and they got a little snooby and began to talk and laugh and jip jab, go back and forth, and you know what? There was nothing productive about it, and little snidey comments and little this and and these shows were meant to train you to believe that that's the truth. That's how you should be. And when you start to level up and you start to realize that decency, mannerly, character matters, these hypnotizing shows, or even what we be trained to be like, doesn't seem to be appealing anymore. It's, as a matter of fact, you begin to peel it off of you, right? Because you realize it really is a joke. It really is a joke to watch the dynamics that people have with each other. And they have to use certain, like beer as a drug, right? Or marijuana. They have to do these things while they're with each other to actually get some common ground, right? Or you got people who are hobnobbing with each other, and a rich people or snobby people, they have to talk a certain way, and they have to have the facts about certain things, and yeah, and it's all, in so many ways, it's all phony. Because when those people leave those people, they have to go back and they have to go and be with themselves. And some people go nuts on that. It's a rarity that people actually find the blessing to get to know themselves, to get to like themselves, and you can really only do that if what's going on inside you is really good. And you really can never really get to truly know yourself unless you're doing it on your knees before God. Because that word self is like where you get the word elf from. You get to know a bigger picture. You get to even take your eyes off of you. You get to see things in a much bigger place. Someone would say, "Oh, that person seems to always be alone, but they're not lonely." You know. And in so many ways, when you're knowing people on any levels, you're getting to know, or you're in a knowing situation, you can be so lonely in it. In any given situations, it's amazing that the things that women will do and men will do just to go to somewhere, and they hobnob and they spend all this money and they try to do things to impress each other, and they show off and do all this crazy stuff. And then when they go back home, they use the word score, or I slept with that person. I'm thinking, wait a second. And it's a brainwashing. because nothing really came out of it. And or you had a hookup. No, you didn't have a hookup. You enter into fakery. You were convinced that that was good for you. And then years go by and you're kind of wondering, wait a second, what have I been investing in? Why is it I haven't really I haven't really arrived at anything. I'm not feeling fulfilled. And then lo and behold, you find social gatherings to go meet up with other people who say the same thing. And guess what? Everyone repeats a stupid thing all over again. Whatever they left behind, they thought they don't want anymore. They do it all over again, except they use different means to do it. And the fakery begins all over again, right? So I'm not gonna too long on this. Getting to know people it's a gift, and once you get to know, you cannot you have to have an ideal. You have to have standards. You have to really see that this is it, and that's what I see as what I want to know, who I want to know. And when you don't find it in people, it is quite all right to say no. And you want to do this earlier in your life, because when you get later on in your life, you will waste a lot of hours, minutes, seconds, months, years with knowing something that was not really good for you. It was not really known to begin with. Because as I said earlier, a lot of it is fake. People who really know each other, they're either very close where they can disclose things to each other, but even then, they can't help each other. They're all one broken piece trying to help another broken piece. Like what happens? They both end up hurting each other at some point or another because they're both broken, right? To be made whole, it really is an alone path, but you're all one because God is one, right? That's where alone comes in, all one, right? And when you move in to the completeness, people have said that too. You know, they went off and they kind of went off to the wild. They took off all by themselves. And God is God's faith, who He works, how He works. He says, without faith, it is impossible to please Him. For the one who comes to God must believe that He is, and He is a rewarder of those who diligently seek Him. You can't get more complete in knowing anything or anyone like by knowing God. And I don't subscribe to a thing, but by knowing Him. Once you get to know Him, your aspirations change, your inspiration changes, your object, your standards of what you see, who you want to know begin to change. You begin to change the quality of the people around you. And once you begin to see it and get it right, you would be considered righteous. And this is where the beauty comes in. It's beauty, and it's also warning for and you can't notice because you didn't notice before. As you become more right, the Bible says that the righteous ought to be careful whom they choose as friends, for the wicked will lead them astray. Okay? And when people are fake, when they're broken, they're all in a state of wickedness because they're broken on a witchcraft. They're under a spell. They're under so many different mindsets that don't take them to the truth. So I'd like to wish you all a good day, and that knowing matters. Who you know matters, and where you're going, what you are supposed to, your importance of what you would like to know is so important in life. And do like and subscribe, and well, I'll put another video out there. Have a good day.